Our next presentation comes from a country where the need for reliable and up-to-date news reporting is now maybe higher than ever before. Here to tell us about hyperlocal network of journalists on the front line of war is Alla Skórek from Ukraine. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alla, and I'm from Ukraine. Actually, now I'm responsible for regional branches at Suspilne Public Broadcaster. 22 regional branches, 8 of them are frontline regions, actually, and one of them is Crimean. We are relocated from Crimea and working from Kiev. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you. This is very important for me not to forget. That's because your work made situation in Ukraine visible. Because of your work, it is possible to find information about Ukraine, about this war in different languages. And if you want to know, you will know. And this is what you made for us, and that what you made for the democracy, actually, and the peace of in the world. Actually, what creates the war? The war creates not only distractions, it creates silence. This is for sure. Entire communities disappear from the news, not because nothing happens there, but because no one can reach it. And I experienced it myself in my native city, Chernihiv, located in the northern part of Ukraine. It was not occupied, but totally surrounded. In 2022, it was shelled from everywhere. We were losing people every day, a lot of destructions, a lot of shellings, and my local media company was also, lost. That's because they were also trying to save their children and families, to relocate and to find themselves somehow in this situation. And for sure, a lot of journalists and families left Chernihiv, trying to save their families, and this is okay. And the number of events is humorous. Everything is happening, and this is also scary, and we have a lot of information, but who are reporting about it? Where we are? Whether we are willing to report 24 hours per day, during the night, in the morning, without sleeping, without weekends, and how much time can we do it? Can we do it for years? Can we do it for decades? Can we do it for 20 years? I don't know. So it's a big problem. And this is a problem not only of Ukraine. We can also think about whether we know a lot about the war in Chechnya and who gave this information for us. Do we have enough information for Gaza, for example, when we need it, immediately when we need it? Do we have a lot of information from Africa and some countries who are also in conflicts immediately, as quickly as we need to decide and to make some decision and solution what is going on there? Yeah, it's a problem not only of Ukraine, but of some other countries. So I mean that sometimes the problem is not the lack of events, the problem is lack of access. Actually, why do communities disappear from the map? Sometimes they're simply too far away, hundreds of kilometers from the newsroom. Sometimes they are too dangerous, under shelling, drone attacks, or near the front line. And sometimes media organizations simply do not have enough crews or resources. We realize that journalism cannot reach everyone. Planet is very big. We have a lot of inhabitants. We can't reach everybody. But we need to think whether we are missing something very important, whether we are missing something that can change our solutions, or maybe the history. We do not know. At Suspilne, Ukraine, we tried to think about it, about this challenge before this big invasion. We asked ourselves, what if journalism didn't need to travel there? Ukraine is quite big, you can see. from the western to the eastern part, one Chernihiv region is like as big as Belgium. Ukraine is quite big, and that's why it is not easy to show the whole picture, to be everywhere. So we decided that maybe sometimes we do not need to travel to some on some very, very long distance. What if people already living inside the communities could become the storytellers? That is how our hyperlocal network appeared. So you can see these numbers, red number, Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv. It was the pilot project in 2021. So we tried to work in such kind of sphere in three regions. And then we, in 2023, we expanded to 8. And by 2025, blue also colors, we had grown almost to nationwide. Now we do not have hyperlocal correspondents only in Crimea. That's because it's totally dangerous and impossible. And now we have 50 hyperlocal correspondents across Ukraine, plus minus 50. This is maximum actually, and the number is always changing. We understand that we are always looking for new one, and we are always changing some of them. Some of them are very resultive, some of them really good, and some of them can move to the big newsroom and to build another career and to create something more. And we're always looking for new one. The most interesting thing is that 10–15% of them are actually professional journalists. Other people are not professional journalists. You can see Andriy Mikheyev. He's 55 years old. He lives in Shostka. This is also northern part of Ukraine, near the border with Russia, under the shelling all the time. And he is a rescue. He is rescue, and because of the age, he is now at home. So we found himself, he has a lot of energy, he wants to do something, he do not want to rest actually. He's not good at texts, he is not very writing in a good way, but he's quite good at making shootages and talking with people, communicating with people, bringing stories just from the middle of event. So that's mean what? Actually, we have editors in our newsroom. They can write a text and they can make a story. But we need a person somewhere in Shostka to take a bicycle and in 5 minutes can be in the middle of event, making shootage, writing interviews and giving it to the newsroom actually. And then we will deliver it, and then we can make this story so popular for millions views, for example. For him alone, it would be impossible, but if we are communicating with the team, if we are doing it together, we can get millions of viewers. And Nadia Martyshka, she is also from the northern part. She is a professional journalist, living in Smallville, it's a small city actually. We found herself. And now she is special correspondent and she's creating documentaries. So she grew up from hyperlocal correspondent to a journalist who's creating big documentaries and millions of viewers. Actually, how this network operates. As I have already mentioned, we do not consider them to be investigators and very good at journalism. Their role is quite different. They need to show us what is happening right now. The first photos, first videos, first witnesses, verification, editorial work, fact-checking, and contacts, all of that remains on the responsibility of the newsroom and our editors. They report, we amplify. So it would be very great if in the case they can create totally story from the beginning to the end. We appreciate it, but we truly believe that this is impossible for the first time for sure. And we are going to help them, be with them, teach them all the time, upgrade their skills, work with them all the year long, actually. How we are looking for them? We thought a lot about the idea how to look for them and to get this information, where are they living, how to get information about them. So the idea was that we needed to organize communicated tours to small villages far away from our big newsrooms, to see them eye to eye. So what we are doing, we are creating very big company in social media. We are writing announcements, videos, information that we are going to make this communication tour. Please come to us. We want to communicate. We want to drink tea with you. We want to share our stories with you. So our top journalists are also visiting these communicating tours in small villages to attract a lot of people and to attract attention. We visited 146 communities, conducted 146 meetings, and about 2,500 people joined these events. What I also noticed during these communicating tours, that the number of subscriptions on our pages also increases in this period of time. That's because people can see us, can communicate. It gives some trust. It gives some interesting communication between us. It makes some bridges so we can feel our audience, what they need from us, and they can ask some questions. And that's how we can also find participants, those people who are willing to work with us and be hyperlocal correspondent. Sometimes our meetings are not very normal. This is village Kamyshevaha in the Zaporizhia region. In this picture, you can see nets on the sky. That means that this village is ordinary all the time under drone attacks, FPV drone attacks. That means that you will never have air alarm. Nobody will give a sign that a danger is near you. And it was impossible to announce our visit and communication tour to this village, that because we realized that enemy can also read this information and use it against us. So we were just traveling in this village, walking from house to house, going to shops, libraries, and schools, communicating with people, trying to find some information and get acquainted with citizens. And here you can see a special gadget. We use it in such kind of villages. It is called drone detector. Actually, this is a gadget that could analyze video signal from the drones in the sky. And on the screen, you can see some territory. In the case, you can see your car directly, or maybe yourself, or maybe some building where you are situated and located. That means that you can be the aim and you need to make some decision and run away. And for our journalists, this gadget is for sure more important than mobile phone during their business trip, during their work. And actually, we found a hyperlocal journalist in Kamyshevaha, so it helped. After the tours, totally we received 1,111 applications from people who wanted to become a hyperlocal correspondent. And of course, just imagine the number of people. You can't teach all of them. You can't give your energy from eye to eye That's why Suspilne trainers created a large online course on the Prometheus educational platform. We created 50 hours of lessons, different lessons. Yeah, here we are, 6 models. Journalism standards, fact-checking, storytelling, shooting, editing, journalistic safety, and a model about artificial intelligence for sure. Very simple lessons, not so deep inside our profession, just for them to be clear what we are doing, just for them to understand what to do, how to shoot, how to make simple addition, yeah? And it helped a lot also. How actually it works now? Today, the network operates through constant cooperation between local correspondents and professional editors. Each region have responsible editor who is responsible for hyperlocal correspondence. They're responsible for their growing up, for their to teach them, to give them, to make some trainings for them, to see where they are very strong, their strong sides, whether they are good at writing texts, or where they are good at telling stories, or where they are good in finding some facts or fact-checking. So we have responsible editor who is in every region who is responsible for this journalist. We identify motivated local residents, train them, integrate them into the newsroom workflows. For sure, they have some weeks when they are just totally work in the newsroom to see how it is working, to see our work inside, and to be as good as it's possible, and provide technical kits for them, for sure. These kits include phones, laptops, microphones, headphones, power banks, and live streaming equipment. What they are doing very often, they are often doing some streaming on our social network platforms. When, for example, some shelling, we have some shelling in Sumy region somewhere, and we know that our hyperlocal correspondent is there, he can stream and he can give this picture to all our platforms, to all our editors to understand what is going on. This is especially important during blackouts or frontline reporting. And for example, the point that they have power banks, they have Starlink sometimes, they can give us information from some territories that do not have mobile connection, for example, for some period of time. And the impact became visible very quickly. Communities returning to the map, trust increased, stories became more human and more emotional and more real. I can give you one example, for example. We have a city Nikopol, not far from a nuclear power station, occupied nuclear power station in the Zaporizhzhia region. And it was a period of time, 1 month ago, when Russian troops brought to the nuclear power station some women who are teaching to work with drones, actually. And they were teaching to work with drones on civilians in Nikopol. So it was just such kind of a school for Russian new item to teach and to kill civilians in Nikopol. The problem was that actually they were located on the nuclear power station. For our soldiers, it is impossible to resist. We can't hit them. And civilians in Nikopol were really under the big threat. Actually, they've built these nets, but it couldn't help. Every day we had news from Nikopol that somebody died riding bicycle from market to their home, or some school bus was hit, or just normal bus or some car was hit. But we didn't have a correspondent in Nikopol. Had correspondents in Dnipro, and this is 200 kilometers and very dangerous kilometers, because logistic is not easy in this area. So what we decided to do, we decided to go to Nikopol to report and to look for somebody who is already living in Nikopol and knows this city as good as possible, knows where to hide, knows where to find some information, knows how to reach from one place to another very quickly and in safety way. And it also helped us, and we found this boy, and he is working for 1 month, and now we can see that situation is completely different. That's because this city is under bigger protection of PPO, we call it, how to protect the sky. Yeah, and we can see that the number of shellings in Nikopol is decreasing. So we can see that situation is much more better. And for us, it's a big result. And here you can see Ismail. Also very interesting one example. You can see, I'll try to point, this is Odessa. In Odessa, we have very big newsroom, actually. And this is Ismail. You can see that actually this is a part of Moldova, and we have only one small bridge on Ukrainian part of the territory that is connected Odessa with this big part of Ukraine called Bessarabia and actually Ismail. We had really big problem in December last year, when Russian soldiers burned up this bridge. It was also winter, very cold period of time, and all this territory was left in the blackout without supply of food, some goods, fuel, without electricity and normal mobile connection, and without normal connection with Ukraine. And just imagine, if you want to travel to this part from Odessa, you need to go through Moldova and cross some borders and come back to Ukraine. So this young girl, hyperlocal correspondent, was actually the only one correspondent in this part of Ukraine, left in blackout, also without this normal connection. For sure, we sent one crew from Odessa through Moldova to help her. But she was the first who made these first reports about the life of Ismail and this region in blackout, and her report was more popular. That's because it was the first and the only one. Nobody could reach this territory, and that's why we've got a lot of views of this report, of these stories, and they were very popular and very necessary for us. Visibility really matters. Hyperlocal journalism also saves enormous resources. We have counted already, if you send a crew, you will pay a lot of money for this trip, and sometimes for hyperlocal journalists, it is even easier to find better stories than for those people who are traveling hundreds of kilometers. So we understand how many resources we really save during this campaign. Actually results. You can see the number of views. This is also simple hyperlocal stories, views on the YouTube actually, about big family, 12 kids in Ivano-Frankivsk. The story covered 190,000 views. Yeah, very, very popular. Sometimes their stories are really very popular. That's because they are very emotional and they about people's life. And actually, the last one I want to mention, that's because you have seen the picture of a correspondent in Priluki. I've mentioned already that she created a documentary. I want to say a couple of words about this documentary. It's called Senish, and nowadays on YouTube we have 1,400,000 views. Very popular documentary in Ukraine. We translated this documentary into English language, so you can also watch it in different languages. Actually, she found real exclusive information and unique material from Ukrainian actually military item. They gave her a video from GoPro of Russian military item who hunted civilians near the front line, near the border with Russia. We have a lot of villages in the forests, just hidden in the forest in small one. And this item was hunting civilians, people, a lot of people, and we've got, just imagine, body cameras of this item, which showed us all the wide of war crime. And she could tell this story to the world, and it became very popular and very interesting for everybody. And I know that a lot of militaries from all over the world, not only in Ukraine, are learning from this video, are watching it, trying to understand the tactic, some interesting moments to realize what is going on in that army. And we have challenges, that's for sure. This system also faces some challenges and some risks. The emotional pressure on local reporters who live inside the trauma and they document this trauma. That's because they are alone. They do not have the support of newsroom and support of editor, eye-to-eye support, I mean. So they can cry, they can be very upset, and they also need these hugs and kisses and some emotions from the newsroom. So we realize that we have this problem and we need to solve it somehow, because they are really located far away from us. We need to work constantly on editorial standards and verification. We need to realize that they are not totally journalists and they can make mistakes, and we are responsible for this information as editors. But anyway, finally, we have this result. What we learned is simple. The closer journalism is to people, the stronger trust becomes. And during the war, visibility can become a form of protection. And what we realized, no community should disappear into silence, especially during the war. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And as Ms. Skorek, it will stay here for a few minutes for your questions. I'm sure there will be plenty of questions. However, the time is limited as she's needed at noon somewhere else. A few minutes for questions for you, ma'am. You have the questions in front of you, and already some of them. But one quick question for you, ma'am, is how can you be sure that out of those 1,111 applicants, that all of them are reliable and not moles or enemies?
Look, what we are doing actually, the first thing all the applicants need to do, they need to come through our course, 50 hours of lessons, and they need to make tasks. And all of them, we will look at these tasks. So we realize that this is a big motivation. We know that a lot of people are quitting 1 hour of lessons, that's enough, so they are quitting. And for us, we realized that this is big motivation to go to the end, actually, to finish. And then after that, for sure, we have this tete-a-tete communication. We can speak, we can communicate, we talk a lot. That's because anyway, all these people, all these correspondents are our workers. We employ them. Anyway, for sure, we analyze these risks, and we have in the company a special department who is responsible for risks, and we're looking for some information, especially when we're talking about occupation and some territories near the occupation. But anyway, the first filter is to go through the school and to finish all these lessons and to listen to get this information and to know actually what we are doing. This is the first filter. And then we have 200 people, and from this amount of people it is easier to get those the most motivated for us.
And sorry for stealing the question, whoever wrote it there. Sorry for that.
So maybe I will... Slava Ukraini, Heroям Slava. What has been the meaning of the news and reporting about the war in Ukraine for the survival of Ukraine? What impact does it have on the Western support awareness? We realize now that actually the surviving of Ukraine is our responsibility. We are responsible for our surviving, and this helps us a lot actually to achieve some results, because when you rely on somebody, when you rely on some support, you can be disappointed in a couple of days, and then you will stop. So for us, we realize that any support from any country is very important for us to stand and to survive. But we need to rely on ourselves and do all our best to create something new, to find some quick solutions for the war to finish as soon as possible. Do these local correspondents make stories on war-related stories only, or on local governments, etc. also? Usually, quick stories related on government can make an editor from the office. No problem. We are also receiving all this press release and comments from the government. It's not a problem to do. Hyperlocal correspondents are for another purpose, to get picture and situation from inside the village, from inside this territory. So we just try to get this purpose, this big result. Do we have some time more?
That's up to you.
That's up to me.
So maybe one more question, and then unfortunately we have to allow Mrs. Skorik to
interesting question. How are the correspondents paid for their work? We have a salary for them. It is not very actually big comparing to our correspondents who are professionals and who are working in the newsroom. It is quite normal for the village, for example, where they are working from. But I think that this is also a big motivation for them to develop. That's because we have these situations when hyperlocal correspondents became correspondents in big newsrooms, and they got bigger salary and bigger results, and some of them are now very good, actually, and they are moving and they are developing. But the salary for start is not very big, but enough for them to be interested in this job.
Can we have one more round of applause for Alla Skorik and the wonderful work they have been doing with the correspondence? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.